Hi, boys and girls. I have a story that I want to share with you. We've talked about how the month of April is Poetry Month, and we've read some poetry, and I have this book that is called Poetree, and I want to share it with you because it does have a character that is a poet in it. So, one of the things I'm noticing before I even read this book is that poetry is not spelled like that. Poetry is spelled with a Y at the end. It does sound like an E. It's a sneaky Y, poetry, but we don't use the double E's here. However, I know if I cover this up, it is the word tree, which I'm seeing in the cover. So I'm wondering if she is a poet and it has something to do with a tree. So I'm already starting to think about this story, use the title, look at the cover, and then come up with some questions as to what on earth, why did they choose to write the word poetry like that? What does the tree have to do with poetry? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what this book has to say. The snow had melted, the buttercups were blooming, and Sylvia celebrated winter's end by writing a poem about spring. So I know now that our character's name is Sylvia, and I know she's a poet. She writes poems. She walked with Shell to the park at the top of the hill and read it to a squirrel. I'm going to guess that this is her dog. Let me see if I can scoot it up a little more so that you can see the bottom. Oh, there we go. Her name must be Shell. Here's her poem. Spring is here at last. I hope it doesn't end too fast. Like a bee, I'll sniff each flower and I'll enjoy each spring hour so much. And I see here in the picture that she's tying it to the tree. I'm wondering some things. I'm wondering if she writes poems all the time and kind of leaves them behind on trees. Is that why this is called poetry? I don't know. I'm going to have to read some more. The squirrel seemed grateful. Sylvia tied her poem to a birch tree and headed home, hoping that it didn't count as littering if it made the world more splendid. The next morning, Sylvia passed the birch on the way to school. From a distance, she saw her poem fluttering in the breeze. But when she got closer, she realized it wasn't her poem at all. Oh, I'm going to stop because I already thought of a question. What happened to her poem? I wonder why her poem's gone. But I see that there's paper there. Did someone else write a poem? I think spring is the best of the seasons for plenty of excellent reasons, like birdie parents building nests where all the baby birds can rest and play. Sylvia's heart did a somersault. She never imagined the tree might write back. Now, I'm pretty sure that trees don't write back, but I do know now that my question is answered and someone has written a poem and left it for Sylvia. I'm getting a little bit of an idea down here that maybe it's this boy. I've never seen him in the story before, so maybe he's the one leading the poems. I'm wondering. In class, Sylvia daydreamed about her new leafy friend. Sylvia, pay attention, said Miss Oliver. Yes, Sylvia, whispered Walt, the boy sitting behind her. Their classmates giggled, and Sylvia sank in her seat. I had to go back because that word is not heart. It doesn't sound like heart. It doesn't have an H at the beginning. And to say Sylvia heart in her seat, that doesn't make sense to me as a reader. So I have to go back and fix it. It's the way readers fix things when they don't make sense. After lunch, Miss Oliver taught the class about haiku. Boys and girls, I have a little bit of a schema about haiku, and haiku is a certain kind of poem. So they must be writing poetry in Sylvia's class. Sylvia struggled to contain her excitement in 17 syllables. White birch on the hill speaks out loudly through rustling leaves. Great green poetry. Oh, I'm noticing that's the first, that's the way poetry is spelled in the title. So now I am answering my question that it does have something with the tree having, or writing poems or holding poems. I'll have to gather a little more information on that. Mrs. Oliver gave Sylvia a gold star. Oh, I'm noticing a couple of things. I'm noticing that Mrs. Oliver must have liked that poem because I know in my schema that some teachers give gold stars to say you did a really nice job. Okay. I'm noticing this boy right here. He's the same boy that sat behind her. He's sticking out his tongue. So I'm getting the idea from this picture that he probably is not a nice character. Maybe he'll change by the end of the story because we know characters change as we read. When the bell rang, Sylvia ran straight to the poetry. She folded her haiku into a paper boat and pushed it halfway into the knothole. So, what's your name? Sylvia asked the tree. But the tree stood in silence. Are you shy like me? The tree nodded in the breeze. Sylvia understood. That night, Sylvia dreamed of rhymes falling like autumn leaves. She dreamed of the cheerful songbirds greeting her in perfect rhythm. On Saturday morning, Sylvia rushed to the park with a heart full of hope. Oh, I bet when she says heart full of hope, she's hoping that there's another poem left for her. The knothole was empty, and she saw no notes on the branches. But the whisper of the wind in the leaves above her was like a poem. Sylvia looked up and saw fragments of sky peering through the treetop. She spoke the words as they bloomed into her mind. Oh, so she's even able to think of a poem just in her mind, just by looking at things. Sky so blue, grass so green, tall tree so tall in between. Favorite friend in morning light and under moon glow late at night. Noticing she's also doing her rhyming. That's a lot of what we see in poems like light and night. Sylvia selected a twig from the ground and gripped it like a pencil. Bye, Sylvia, she wrote in the air. But that didn't seem right. Love, Sylvia. She waved her stick with a flourish, accidentally hitting a branch. A tightly folded ninja star fell to her feet. Sylvia couldn't unfold it fast enough. Oh, I wonder where that came from. I've wondered a while. Can a tree and child be friends? Your words give me hope. Sylvia felt a spark in her heart. Good thing she brought sidewalk chalk. She scrawled in big blacky letters so the birch tree could see. I never thought that I would see such lovely poems from a tree. I wish that I could climb and live among the words you love to give. But if I lived up in a tree, I sure would miss my family, especially Shell. She's writing that on the sidewalk. Sylvia thought it was the greatest thing she had ever written in all her years. She wrapped her arms around the poetry. Yes, so now I understand why poetry was written like that at the beginning. She does see the tree as a poet and a tree. It was stronger, wiser, and kinder than the children at school. She knew she would always have a friend at the park. She didn't open her eyes until Shell barked. Walt was there. Oh, I remember Walt is the person, the little boy who sat behind her in school. Walt was there staring at the ninja star haiku sticking out of Sylvia's pocket. That's not for you. That's for my tree. Sylvia blinked. It was from the tree just for me. Walt shook his head. Sylvia didn't understand. Had the tree she loved so much not given her a thing? Oh, look at her face. Her face is really confused, boys and girls. She's trying to figure out what is happening here. Sylvia didn't want to cry, not at the park. Walt didn't want her to cry either. I'm sorry I was mean at school, he said. Ooh, this is my first clue that Walt is changing in the story. He started out being kind of mean, but now he's starting to say sorry. Sylvia smiled. A friend of the tree is okay with me. She could never resist a good rhyme. Walt read Sylvia's chalk poem out loud. You're a wonderful poet, he said. You deserve that gold star. But who is Shell? Sylvia pointed. My best friend's name is Shell. I think he likes the way you smell. I can tell, added Walt, and the two poets giggled. Can I borrow your chalk? Walt composed, that's a big word for made, a new poem next to Sylvia's. If you want to share a poem with me, give it to the tall birch tree, or if you need a friend for writing, play with or sit besiding, I'll be here for you joyfully, right beneath the poetry. The new friends sat for a while side by side, backs against the birch. Sunlight and shadows danced through the leaves above them as they silently searched for the most marvelous words to describe it all. And okay, so we did have some changing in this book. We had Walt change, certainly, and now we've answered some questions about the cover and the title, which didn't make sense to us at first. So that's a good example, not only of some great poetry during our poetry month, but also how we can use questions to help us better understand the things that we're reading. All right, first grade, hope you love that story.